So much has been discussed about Native American communities and their rich culture, yet few are aware of the revelation we're about to unveil in this video. Within these communities, a distinctive aspect of marital arrangements comes to light, one where Native American wives were allowed extramarital relationships, a practice endorsed by their husbands. This practice, prevalent among the Powhatan tribes, has stirred curiosity, prompting many to ponder if this tradition signifies a unique perspective on relationships, or if there's a deeper cultural significance. Amidst the seemingly scandalous revelation of wives enjoying sexual freedoms sanctioned by their husbands, it becomes apparent that Powhatan women adhered more to cultural norms than personal desires. As we delve into this intriguing aspect of Native American history, we aim to shed light on the history and details surrounding the marital affairs within the Powhatan tribes. Join us in uncovering a lesser-known facet of their culture that challenges preconceptions and offers a fresh perspective on the rich diversity of Native American traditions. So, relax and immerse yourself in this exploration of the super and sometimes nasty sex lives of the Powhatan tribes. As you watch this video, ensure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our new updates. The Powhatan Confederacy, led by Chief Powhatan, was a complex society of several Algonquian-speaking tribes. Powhatan was the paramount chief of Tsenacommacah, a political alliance of Virginia Indians in the early 17th century. He is best known for his interactions with the English settlers at Jamestown, including his daughter Pocahontas' association with Captain John Smith. The Powhatan people lived in the Tidewater region of Virginia, relying on agriculture, hunting, and fishing for sustenance. Their societal structure was organized along matrilineal lines, with descent and inheritance passing through the female lineage. This matrilineal structure likely played a role in shaping family dynamics and relationships. Marriage within Powhatan society served various purposes, including social cohesion, economic stability, and the continuation of family lines. The specific rituals and customs associated with Powhatan marriages are not well documented, but it's reasonable to assume that spiritual beliefs and cultural practices would have influenced them. The Powhatan marriages were likely an essential institution in their culture, serving social and economic functions. In Powhatan society, the partnership between men and women in marriage was not merely a romantic bond, but a practical necessity for the community's survival. Men and women collaborated to fulfill daily and seasonal tasks, recognizing the complementary roles each gender played. The initiation of courtship by men showcased their responsibility in selecting a partner who could effectively contribute to communal well-being. While women retained the right to decline marriage proposals, their acceptance required the approval of their parents, emphasizing the communal aspect of marital unions. The Powhatan marriage process involved elaborate courtship and formal ceremonies. Courtship initiated with the man presenting food gifts to the potential bride, demonstrating his ability to provide for her. Negotiating the bride's wealth instead of a dowry compensated the bride's parents for losing their daughter's labor. The marriage ceremony was a formal event held at the bride's home, involving symbolic actions such as breaking a chain of shell beads over the couple's heads. These rituals emphasized the significance of the union and its communal implications. While first marriages were expected to be lifelong commitments, additional marriages were negotiated for specified terms. Also, one intriguing aspect of Powhatan culture was the sexual freedom granted to wives, which is subject to the husband's permission. Although scandalous to outsiders, this practice was likely more rooted in cultural norms than individual desires. Husbands often loaned their wives to visitors as an act of hospitality, reinforcing the communal nature of relationships. The cultural acceptance of extramarital relationships within specific parameters showcased a subtle understanding of interpersonal connections within Powhatan society. Similarly, identified patterns emerge in exploring the diverse marriage practices of Native American tribes. The Choctaw average marriage age was 25 for males and 23 for brides. Conversely, the Blackfoot displayed significant variance, with females entering marriage as early as 10 to 16, while men deferred until at least 35. Tribal ceremonies, exemplified by the Modoc, blended social festivals with rhythmic songs and even sexual intercourse. Furthermore, celebrating a girl's first menses through a dance marked the acknowledgement of her readiness for marriage. Over time, a shift occurred in marriage norms. Initially, universal marriage near puberty prevailed among Native Americans in the 16th century. However, as time progressed, child marriage gained prevalence. Girls during the latter half of the 19th century were often married off between the ages of 10 and 16, while men delayed marriage until 35 or later. In the cultural context, pre-adolescent children were encouraged to engage in sexual play, particularly among the Comanche, who paid little attention to virginity. The acceptance of masturbation as a normal aspect of young children's lives was observed among Navajo and Powhatan tribes. Children received explicit warnings against heterosexual activities, with Powhatan tribes imparting sexual education through maternal uncles and aunts. These teachings emphasized the dangers associated with early sexual experimentation. As puberty dawned, notable behavioral changes ensued. A taboo against sex play between siblings emerged, while initiation rituals and relationships among teenagers became more common, reflecting shifts in social dynamics. Water games offered chances for sexual intimacy, but the Mojave tribe refrained from engaging in actual relations due to their belief that intercourse in water could lead to a specific disease. Mutual masturbation, albeit infrequent, occurred, with older boys occasionally engaging in forced rectal intercourse. Childhood exploration mirrored adult life, with Mojave children participating in masturbation contests, playing house, and imitating adult relationships. Age grades were often forgotten, allowing children to simulate adult roles freely. Finally, challenges arose concerning childbirth knowledge and modern parental control. Some tribes lacked elaborate puberty ceremonies, contributing to a shortage of knowledge about childbirth among girls. Contemporary issues, such as a lack of discipline, led to parental control problems, necessitating the separation of children as they became aware of gender differences. Children's sexual play was bound to be viewed by grown-ups as an entertaining action rather than as a cause for alarm. This relaxed disposition of kid-raising kept on impacting individuals as they grew up. In some cases, there are gatherings of Powhatan young men who would endeavor to bait little kids into the huts where they would have intercourse and other sex play. Chocobo young men pursued young ladies and transparently attempted to touch their sensitive body parts, and assuming a young lady was gotten, they could attempt intermission. Young men of 6 or 7 would build little houses in the forest and play house with young ladies of similar age, lying with them in imitation of adult copulation. Interestingly, Indian parents do not just allow their kids to stroke off, they train them to ejaculate as well. Young men and young ladies of the Powhatan tribe need to drink semen. The Powhatan tribe also has a custom of isolating their young men from the young ladies at 7 years old for a long time. During this period, they go through piercings, nosebleeds, and need to drink the semen of the tribe's mightiest fighters. They embrace sexuality from an incredibly young age. Young men begin participating in sexual movement from the age of 10 to 12, while the young ladies start from 6 years. At around the age of 13, these men have intercourse with more established ladies who demonstrate and show them how best to satisfy their accomplices. Young ladies do a custom of hitting the dance floor with apple cuts stuffed in their armpits after the dance. Each gives her cut to her preferred man, and he then, at that point, eats it. In addition, the Powhatan tribe constructs love cottages where teenage young ladies can have intercourse with various men till they find the one with the Powhatan tribe. The elders assemble a love hut for their teenage daughters. Different young men go through the night here for a large number of days until she finds a suitable partner who is then with her for life. They practice polyandry fundamentally. Every one of the siblings shares one lady, so they don't have an excessive number of children for their restricted farmland. The Powhatan tribe annually hosts a wife-stealing festival where men wear elaborate makeup and costumes at the Jeerwolf Festival despite children being married in infancy. They try to steal another man's wife discreetly, and if successful without being caught, this union becomes recognized as a peculiar courtship and marriage ceremony. In the Powhatan Indian community of Seneca Moco, specific and distinct gender roles were expected. Women bore children, managed farming, collected fuel, butchered animals, cooked, made household items, foraged, and supervised young children. Men, on the other hand, engaged in hunting, fishing, field clearing, and warfare, and participated in political and military councils. Survival required a balance of these tasks, and individuals relied on partners of the opposite sex for survival. Consequently, marriage was primarily an economic arrangement rather than a romantic one. Men could have multiple wives if they could provide for them financially, particularly serving as symbols of wealth for chiefs. The paramount chief, Powhatan Wahusongkok, supposedly had up to 100 wives in his lifetime. While the first marriage was expected to be lifelong, additional marriages were often negotiated for shorter terms. Unless married to a chief, women could engage in extramarital affairs with their husband's consent, though dishonesty was severely punished. Virginia Indians adhered to their marriage customs long after encountering the English, and marriages between Indians and English settlers were infrequent. According to English colonists' written records, physical beauty was considered crucial in selecting wives, and women became eligible for marriage upon reaching puberty and being capable of fulfilling their obligation to bear children. In traditional societies, men gained eligibility after completing the Huskanar ritual, marking their transition into manhood. This initiation granted them the status necessary to fulfill responsibilities, such as hunting, fishing, and engaging in combat. The courtship process commenced with a man presenting potential brides with food gifts, showcasing his ability to provide, while women had the freedom to decline proposals. If accepted, a negotiation for the bride's wealth took place, a reciprocal arrangement where the groom or his parents paid a sum to the bride's parents. This bride's wealth served as compensation for the lost labor of the bride upon leaving her family to join her husband. Following a successful negotiation, a celebratory feast will be organized and the man prepared for married life, often supported by contributions from his female relatives. A formal marriage ceremony will be conducted at the bride's home, involving the exchange of bride wealth, joining hands, and the symbolic breaking of a chain of shell beads. The newlyweds then establish their residence, potentially in the groom's parents' town, if the couple hailed from different locations. Turning to historical interactions, the early relations between Powhatan tribes and English settlers in Jamestown, Virginia, in 1607 were complex. Initially met with hostility, likely influenced by past encounters with Spanish explorers, the Indians eventually extended traditional hospitality and food offerings to the newcomers. Powhatan, leader of a tribal confederation around the Chesapeake Bay, initially aimed to assimilate the English through hospitality. However, as the colonists focused on seeking instant wealth, neglecting essential tasks like planting crops, their dependence on Indians for food increased. During the colony's challenging initial years, Captain John Smith's leadership played a pivotal role in its survival. Smith explored the region, established trade with local Indians, and, unfortunately, advocated a policy akin to the Spanish treatment of Indians, involving forced labor and slavery. When negotiations for food failed, Smith resorted to taking what he needed by force. By 1609, Chief Powhatan recognized the English settlers' intention to stay and was disappointed by their refusal to reciprocate his hospitality or engage in marriages with native women, viewed as an insult from the native perspective. Aware of the English invasion and the occupation of his land, Powhatan's people resorted to attacking settlers, destroying livestock, and burning crops. While claiming ignorance and lack of control over the young men committing these acts, Powhatan made these statements through the lens of John Smith, a notably biased observer. Over the next decade, colonists executed search and destroy raids on Indian settlements, burning villages and corn crops. Both sides committed atrocities, and Powhatan eventually entered an uneasy truce after colonists captured his daughter, Pocahontas, who later married John Rolfe, fostering improved relations. Furthermore, in 1778, Captain Cook, a renowned British explorer, arrived and was initially greeted warmly by natives. However, in exchange for hospitality, Cook and his sailors introduced diseases, notably tuberculosis, leading to a significant population decline. Sexually transmitted infections like syphilis and gonorrhea further exacerbated the situation, causing a severe decrease in fertility across generations. Food traditions were strict, especially for women, with certain foods punishable by execution if consumed. Men and women couldn't share staples like POI and taro from the same bowl, though they could be intimate. Royals eventually abandoned these traditions under Western influence. In interfamilial relationships, incest among royals mirrored practices in ancient European royal families, both aiming to preserve and extend family lineages. Chiefs, more direct in their ties, frequently saw siblings marrying for the purpose of producing offspring with the most mana or divine life force. However, such practices were deemed unacceptable in modern times. Society sees expressions of sexuality as something very private, which people keep separate from their public activities. Sexuality was present almost everywhere. People wove sexual references into dances, chants, and the names of places for them. Pleasure was something to balance openly alongside family, religion, and the land. Their language is also full of words and phrases that are loaded with sensual expressions. They introduced concepts such as sex work, adultery, illegitimate children, and sin, which had lasting effects on the culture. Nudity wasn't seen as sexual. There were many reasons for being naked, and very few of them had to do with sex. Bathing in the nude with family members was perfectly fine, as well as surfing and participating in water sports. Women often went with their breasts uncovered, covering up with robes to protect themselves from the elements rather than for modesty. Stripping naked in public was also a sign of overwhelming grief or insanity and could be done as a sign of shame or submission, mostly becoming pregnant by a man. Other than one's husband was no big deal, because intercourse with another man's wife was common. It was possible that a woman would become pregnant with a child that wasn't her husband's. This wasn't shunned, and children could be as communal as wives, according to the memoir of one English girl who grew up among Powhatans. If a woman fell pregnant by a man other than her husband in the community, there was no stigma. It wasn't like suburban wife swapping. It was a question of survival. Equally, if a couple were childless, It wasn't uncommon for another family to give them a child whom they'd love as their own to raise. Polygamy was common. Having more than one wife was a sign that a man could afford to provide for numerous women, a testament to his wealth. When Christianity was introduced to Powhatan, populations in polygamy declined but did not disappear. If a man knew he was going to be away for a while, he would arrange for his wife to take a second husband so that he knew she would be protected while he was gone. Eskimos believe without sexual affinity, Powhatan conceptions of homosexuality don't conform to Western understandings of the subject. That being said, opinion varies widely amongst the different Powhatan communities of adultery and multiple marriages. Among the Powhatans, the assumption was that first marriages were lifelong, except in cases where a spouse was captured in war, allowing the remaining partner to seek another. Even without formal divorce, additional marriages were permitted. For instance, a married man could court and marry additional wives, especially if he demonstrated the ability to provide for them, turning wives into status symbols. Chiefs, notably the paramount chief or Mamanatawich, often took multiple wives, although it remains unclear if female chiefs ever had multiple husbands. The hierarchy among wives, division of household work, and sleeping arrangements are not well documented by English observers. The paramount chief Powhatan retained a wife until she bore him a child, after which she would return home. William Strachey, a Virginia Company of London secretary and author of The History of Travail into Virginia Britannia, 1612, suggested that Powhatan might have had over 100 wives, living in various houses and taking turns keeping him company. The wives, who were also working partners engaged in tasks like raising corn and cooking, were expected to entertain lavishly and adorn themselves with valuable furs, jewelry, and face paint to impress visitors. Strachey noted that among Powhatan's many wives, he favored about a dozen, mostly very young women, for whom he took more delight. It's likely that the Englishman didn't realize that all these women were actively involved in domestic tasks. According to Henry Spellman, who became fluent in Powhatan's Algonquian dialect, Powhatan selected wives based on their beauty, and family background may have played a role. Chiefs like Powhatan, skilled politicians, probably married women from different towns to create in-laws who could serve as allies. Powhatan's practice of keeping wives only until they bore a child allowed him to accumulate wives and establish valuable family connections through their children. Spellman emphasized the significance of children, noting that many wives producing many offspring could, in turn, provide support to their parents in old age, creating a familial and societal support system. While specific details about some other sexual practices are not well documented, it's reasonable to assume that Powhatan tribes, like any other human society, had their customs and norms regarding intimate relationships. The roles of men and women in Powhatan society, as observed by English colonists, may have influenced these practices. It's essential to approach this topic with cultural sensitivity and acknowledge the limitations of historical records. Native American cultures varied widely, and it's important not to generalize or make assumptions about the specifics of the Powhatan tribe's intimate lives based on limited information. Additionally, discussions of indigenous cultures should prioritize respect and avoid perpetuating stereotypes or eroticizing their practices. Information about the intimate aspects of the Powhatan tribe's lives, including their sex lives, is limited and often speculative. The available historical records from the time of English colonization provide some insights into Powhatan culture, but these records are biased and filtered through the perspectives of the colonists. Furthermore, Native American societies often had oral traditions that European observers did not extensively record. Understanding the sex lives of the Powhatan tribes requires a thoughtful and culturally sensitive approach. It's essential to avoid imposing Eurocentric perspectives on indigenous cultures and recognize the diversity among Native American societies. Different tribes had distinct customs, beliefs, and practices, and generalizations should be avoided. While we can infer certain aspects of Powhatan's intimate life based on the available historical records and general knowledge of Native American cultures, a comprehensive and accurate understanding remains elusive due to the limited and biased nature of the sources. It is essential to approach such topics with humility, acknowledging the gaps in our knowledge and respecting the diversity of indigenous cultures. It's on this note we wrap up today's episode of Shades of Greatness. Thank you for joining us once again. Remember to click the like button and subscribe to our channel. See you in our next video.